veterans of all wars, especially the veterans of the Vietnam War, and to the families, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, spouses, and comrades of those who have given their lives in the service of our country, and to the families of the MIA, we extend our most sincere and heartfelt welcome. Commencing our program, I would like to call on Rabbi Levine of the United Jewish Church, Synagogue, for invocation. Rabbi Levine.
Rise. Our God, God of all those who came before us, of every race and nation, we gather here this afternoon in pain and in pride to dedicate this monument to those who fell serving their country during the Vietnam War. It hurts to contemplate the deaths of young men with so much to live for, so much potential cruelly snuffed out. But our hearts are uplifted today, knowing that the greater Danbury community will not allow their memories to die, will pay tribute to the sacrifices they made, and will become wiser from our pain. This monument will do more than commemorate death. It celebrates humanity in the midst of destruction, compassion in the midst of carnage. A learned sage once said, men and nations sometimes behave wisely once they've exhausted all other alternatives. Our nation did not always act wisely during those years, and we must assert the belief that never again shall our government send people to die without real consensus to be there, and without clear sense that it is in our national interest. We ask your help in this, O Lord. Grant us consolation, give us hope, and remind us not so much of the deaths of these young people, but of their lives and all they meant to us. And may this monument bring some measure of peace to our homes and our hearts. And join me in saying, Amen.
Please remain standing for the playing of the national anthem, and I invite you to sing along.
Color guard, bring your units to present arms. First one. Put the hands pull. Present. Turn.
Please be seated. I would like to acquaint you with the people on the podium. You have met Rabbi Robert Levine. Richard Case is the chairman of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee, assisted by John Hill, the co-chairman and also one of the co-founders, James Purcell, the treasurer of the committee, Jack Burrows, also committee member and the artist who conceived the first rendition of this monument, Pat Waldron, a committee member and director of Veterans Affairs, Joseph Sauer, mayor of the city, Mayor James Dyer, Colonel David Golan, Major General Herbert Riley, Chaplain Timothy Steves, Father Stanley Rousseau, and George Corris, the sculptor of this monument. Congressman John Rowland is presently at the Brookfield Bicentennial. He will join us later in our reception. We would like to introduce to you the first speaker of the afternoon, Richard Case, who along with John Hill were the two members of the founding committee. They conceived the first idea 5 years ago, and they founded a committee made up of the aforementioned persons that I mentioned earlier, and Richard has served as president and chairman of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee. He has served nearly on a daily basis for all these past 5 years. He has been the inspirational and the motivating force in bringing together the various parts and efforts of all of our people to today's realization. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard K. Case.
Honored guests, members of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. All men have dreams, and some of us are lucky enough to see them come to realization. In that regard, 1988 will always be a highlight in my life. Presiding over a committee of citizen volunteers whose love for a cause so deserving has been a distinct honor and privilege. We often hear the phrase, let's put war, especially the Vietnam War, behind us. But far too many families in this country cannot. For the loved ones of those who are still missing and those who paid the ultimate price, there can be no forgetting. I hope America never forgets the lessons of Vietnam and the price we paid, and that we learn from that experience and pass it on to our future generations in hopes that their leaders will not make the same mistakes that the leaders of our generations made. Throughout the past 5 years, this committee has grown ever closer to one another, much like the veterans of a conflict. The teamwork, the ingenuity, and sometimes just sheer determination have all brought us to the dedication of this memorial today. To them all, I say thank you. To the people of the city of Danbury and the surrounding towns that make up the greater Danbury community, thank you. To the Vietnam veteran, I say stand tall and be proud. You have served well. Let no man ever tell you that your tour duty in Vietnam was anything less than the noblest and most selfless expression of your love for your country. This memorial is a testimonial to each and every one of you. By its presence, the people of Greater Danbury are saying to you, welcome home, God bless you, and well done. I ask all Vietnam veterans to make on this day at this memorial a new commitment to yourselves and to your families. Our war is over, but we will never forget it as long as we live. Suppress the bad memories and remember the courage, the strength, and the tenacity of the men and women with whom you served. But beware, these are not the attributes of the Vietnam veteran alone. They're characteristic of the American people, the people who went before you, people who stand alongside of you right now, and God willing, the future generations to come. We have an obligation to those who died, an obligation to monitor our government and its leaders to ensure that they never, ever commit our most precious product and our most precious commodity, the youth of this country, to any cause unless they are totally committed, not as politicians, but as a nation. At the end of this ceremony, we invite you all to come forward to view the memorial up close. We ask you to form a line to my left here in an orderly manner and to pass across the front of the memorial. And as you pass that memorial and you look at it closely and you read the names, I ask you to think about a poem written by Archibald MacLeish, the young dead soldier. In it he says, "Whether our lives and our death were for peace and a new hope, or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We give you our deaths. You must give them their meaning. We were young. We died. Remember us. Remember us."
Thank you, Richard, for that most inspiring address. To give the official welcome on behalf of our city, I would like to call on Mayor Joseph Sauer. Mayor Sauer is himself a veteran, having served with distinction in the Korean conflict. He and his family have served our city in many capacities, spanning several decades. Joe recently retired as an outstanding school principal and is serving as our current mayor. Please welcome our Chief Executive, Mayor Joseph Sauer.
Thank you, Gino, Reverend clergy, members of the dais, and of course, friends, family, and Vietnam veterans. There's a special time in a city's history when all its citizens are brought together by a common spirit. Today is one of those days. As I look about on all of you, I can't help but feel the emotion of the moment. There's a spirit here today which many Vietnam veterans never had the opportunity to feel upon their initial return to the United States. As time has passed, and as we have learned more about the true role these brave people served, the proper spirit is now upon us. Of course, we are here today to dedicate a new monument. But the event is far more important than that. On this, the eve of Memorial Day, we are here to say a special thank you to the 47 people whose names are listed on this Vietnam Veterans Memorial Monument, and we are here to tell their family and friends that we care, and that we shall be eternally grateful for their sacrifice. Some of the people whose names appear on this monument are among the confirmed casualties of the Vietnam War. Others are still listed as missing in action. Words cannot convey the grief and anguish felt by their families and colleagues. That's why, in my mind, this monument and this day are so very special. The concept behind this monument is exceptionally symbolic. By showing a soldier carrying a Vietnamese child, we are reminded of the true purpose of the soldier's mission. They want to help the South Vietnamese and to allow their future generations, represented by the child, to live a life of freedom. Thanks to the creation of this monument in Danbury, future generations of Americans will forever be reminded of these soldiers' cause. While it would be impossible for me to thank everyone who was responsible for making this day a success, I would like to thank the members of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee, and in particular, Richard Cacase, the chairman, Jack Barrows, who drew the initial conceptual drawing for the monument, Bill Shaw, one of Danbury's councilmen, who was instrumental in organizing this day, Pat Waldron, director of Danbury's Veterans Advisory Center, John Hill, Jim Purcell, and Larry Landeman. I'd also like to compliment the work of the sculptor George Koros for doing such a magnificent job. Finally, I need to read this letter to Richard Cacase publicly. Dear Richard, this is the day that you rightfully get to bask in the spotlight for all of the time you have spent preparing for the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Monument. It is true that you have had help from a solid corps of volunteers and friends. However, you are the person who took the initiative and had the fortitude to bring this dream to a successful conclusion. Indeed, you had the courage and dedication to see the project through. As a war veteran myself, I know how much this monument means to the friends, family members, and fellow veterans who are acquainted with the names on this shrine. As the years go by, our memory tends to erase the pain and sorrow, ever so slowly. As citizens, we move forward with our lives and work. But thanks to the countless hours of time you have devoted to this project, we will always, for generations to come, remember the persons who truly gave the supreme sacrifice for their country and for us. From the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of all the citizens of Danbury and its neighbors, I say thank you for a job well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Sauer. You alluded to George Koros, the sculptor. George was born in Greece. He graduated from the Academy of the Fine Arts in Athens. He studied metal casting techniques in Italy and Spain. He had served as an assistant to the foremost sculptor, Jacques Lipsitz. He was a recipient of many awards. His works were shown on Channel 13 TV. He's a professor of art at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. Ladies and gentlemen, the creator and artist of this great, magnificent work of art, George Koros, for a few remarks.
For your kind introduction. I don't know really who had the guts to put a sculptor in front of microphone, but I would like to assure you that he who honors a sculptor, he honors himself. And now relax, I'll not be very brief because whatever I wanted to say, it is in there. I would like only to thank the whole team, and make no mistake, this is a team's work project, who worked and gave reality to a dream. First of all, I would like to thank the primary dreamer, Mr. Richard Cacase, and his friend, Mr. John Hill, because without them, this monument would have not been the same, if it were a monument at all. They supplied me with the uniform, with the helmet, the M16 rifle, the shoes, the sandals, the map, the medals, and they also were looking constantly over my shoulder to see what I'm doing. They really deserve a post-war medal for that. I also would like to thank Mr. Jack Barrows for his helping hand, and also Mr. Canzaniero for the granite base. Finally, last but not least, I would like to thank Mr. Bob Spring for his great job in casting his sculpture in bronze. His foundry, the Mother Foundry, served for half a century now the best of sculptors, and that includes me too. And now a few words about the monument. Unlike many other monuments who glorify the war, this monument glorifies humanity and compassion. It reveals another side of the war, It depicts another type of heroism, the heroism to remain humane and compassionate even under the worst of circumstances. You'll soon see this monument depicts a combat soldier who holds and shields a frightened Vietnamese child, a God's child who lives the terror of the war, a war that she cannot understand. And then, as you see, the soldier with his big eyes and deep philosophical thoughts, you wonder if he does not identify himself with that child. You see, he too lives and fights a war with two fronts, the other being at home, a war that he himself did not completely understand. Thank you very much.
Very much, George. The next speaker is Colonel David Bowen. In time of war, our country calls upon its citizen service people to carry out its commitments. Colonel Bowen exemplifies the best in that tradition. He enlisted in the National Guard, rose through the ranks to his present rank of colonel, and during these past 28 years, he also pursued a career in education, serving as a teacher, principal, and superintendent of schools. He presently serves as Chief of Staff of the Connecticut Army National Guard. Truly exemplifies the best of all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome please, Colonel David Bowen.
Reverend clergy, members of the distinguished dais, Major General Riley, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, fellow members in the uniform here today. America is a land of many heroes. In this great state, we have had 52 wartime recipients of the Medal of Honor. One of the first Connecticut recipients was a 15-year-old boy by the name of Oscar Peck from Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1862. The latest was Army Private First Class Daniel J. Shea of Norwalk, who died in action in the jungle in Vietnam. Today we gather to honor Oscar Peck, PFC Daniel J. Shea, and all those who have died in our nation's wars. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who gave their lives for this country are laid to rest in places known and unknown throughout this nation and around the world. We know nothing of their individual thoughts and feelings at the hour of their death, but we do know they were patriotic, dedicated, and courageous. They loved America, believed in the ideals for which it stands. They paid the highest price for freedom, and we honor them all for it. The blessings of freedom require never-ending vigilance. From the early days of our nation, each generation has played an active, vital role in maintaining our freedom. Had even a single generation been lax or indifferent, we would have risked the loss of that precious freedom. Keeping our country secure is the responsibility of all Americans. But those in uniform must face each day the challenge of this responsibility as set forth by our founding fathers. Roger Sherman, one of the first Connecticut delegates, holds the unique distinction of being the only man to sign the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and our Constitution. He, as well as other signers of our Constitution, knew it was important and fixed forever as one of the cornerstones of our democracy when they wrote in the preamble to the Constitution, that it was our job in the military to provide for the common defense. The concept of the common defense was important to them then. It was their intention to make the defense the responsibility of every citizen. The American Continentals and the militia were not professional soldiers in the European sense. They were a people's army of citizen soldiers fighting for a cause. That cause has remained foremost in our nation since 1776. We now know that continued peace requires ongoing effort and renewed sacrifice. Time and again, Americans have, throughout military service, responded to their nation's call. The active Army, National Guard, the Army Reserve train daily to make every effort to be prepared. Today's Army faces challenges unlike any other in our history. Our enemies are now capable of striking targets in our own country. Their forces, which greatly outnumber those of the United States, continue to expand and modernize. To meet this challenge, we must be strong. Strong enough to deter war and to win if combat is forced upon us. To be strong, we must man the Army with quality people, train effectively, modernize our forces, and be able to mobilize in a sufficient and timely manner so we can influence the early stages of the conflict. In Connecticut, your Army National Guard ranks 5th in the nation with respect to unit readiness. The quality of our people is above the norm. The modern Army has come a long way from the citizen soldiers of the First Continental Army. Then soldiers were poorly fed and clothed. They often lacked sufficient weapons and ammunition. Today's soldiers have access to some of the most modern, up-to-date weapons, equipment, and training available. But the American warrior himself has changed little over the years since that first shot was fired at Lexington. Given a challenge and able leadership, the American soldier will endure hardship and undergo any sacrifice in order to win. Today's soldier Americans, sons and daughters, share a common bond with all veterans and American soldiers of all ages. That bond is a commitment to uphold those freedoms we cherish so dearly, to make the ultimate sacrifice, if necessary, to defend those freedoms established by our forefathers in the likes of Roger Sherman and others when they penned and ratified our Constitution. It is because of that difference that citizens willingly serve today. So today need not be a sad occasion. It need not be a time of tears. We can be glad and thankful that there once walked upon this earth people such as you honor here today, the Vietnam veteran. Be proud of them, honor them, remember them. They are what America is all about. They served this country with distinction. They had a vision of what a strong and free America, and gave us the opportunity to expand on that vision as time goes on. A rich heritage has been passed to us to build upon for our future posterity. Let us meet the challenge before us. Let us never fail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Bowen. The highest ranking military officer in our now 9-town area is Major General Herbert Riley. His career started 34 years ago when he was drafted. Can't believe that, Major General being drafted. But he was drafted as an enlisted man in 1951 in the Korean conflict. He served in the occupation forces in Japan. He continued his military service in the United States Army Reserve. He served in various and wide variety of assignments with great distinction. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame at the Infantry School at Fort Benning, Georgia. And upon his recent retirement, he was presented with the Distinguished Service Medal for exceptional meritorious service in positions of great responsibility. This decoration is the highest award by the Army in peace times. Ladies and gentlemen, our own Major General Herbert Riley.
Distinguished guests, fellow servicemen and women, families and friends, the names of our area veterans killed or missing in Vietnam, having been inscribed on this bronze statue to be unveiled today, is a day long to be remembered. Thursday, I talked to General Westmoreland about this statue, showing compassion and the humane side of our servicemen and women in Vietnam. He told me to tell those attending the ceremony that he heard about the statue and was excited about it, and asked me to pass on his congratulations to those responsible. Another man asked me to tell those in attendance today that this unveiling was a great tribute to our servicemen and women who served in Vietnam. He was a Medal of Honor winner in Vietnam by the name of Major Patrick Brady. I would now like to read to you the Major Pat Brady story. For Army Major Patrick Henry Brady, it was just another day of action in Vietnam. A day not very different from any other day. I had worse in terms of losing aircraft and numbers of patients, he recalls. It so happens that that day, people saw it and took time to write about it. What they saw on January the 6th, 1968, was Brady evacuating 51 wounded men during the course of a violent day of battle using 3 helicopters near the village of July. On one flight, he evacuated 2 wounded South Vietnamese soldiers from a completely fogged valley using his rotor blade to clear away the fog. During one flight, he volunteered to land his aircraft in an enemy minefield. A mine exploded near his helicopter, damaging the aircraft. He still managed to lift off, rescuing 6 wounded American soldiers in the process. For his actions, Brady received the Medal of Honor. I would like to read to you his comments upon receiving the Medal of Honor. Brady spent 2 tours in Vietnam saving lives. Using the call double nickel, after the number 55 he used as a radio call, Brady flew a Huey helicopter on medical evacuation missions. Having the Medal of Honor has given him the opportunity to meet people and go places he might not have otherwise. But he says, I can tell you this, it's a hell of a lot harder to wear than it is to earn. It changes the relationship you have with people. As soon as they find out, they have a tendency to treat you not as an ordinary person you are, he says. Brady is now Chief of Army Public Affairs in Washington as a Brigadier General. He says the experience is mostly good today, but it was not always been that way. Called upon frequently to speak in public, he remembers coming back from an unpopular war to face hostile audiences. When I spoke at college campuses, they put guards on me, he says. They said it was for my protection. Politicians in the early 70s would turn their backs if a photographer tried to take our picture together. Now they have parades for us Vietnam veterans in major cities. Though the medal means a great deal to him, so too do other things. Like meeting a situation full of obstacles. When the soldier gets the guy on board and I call over the radio that we're en route and we have wounded, it's a sense of relief, satisfaction, and gratification that beats any other experience in life, he says. Brigadier General Brady is a very caring and humane soldier. He is our only general on active duty today awarded the Medal of Honor. Pat Brady's comments are important. He said, people saw it and took time to write about it. What Brigadier General Brady was implying was that he was doing his job, and many other vets did their job above the normal call to duty as well, without recognition. Perhaps in this audience, or in some other location in this great land of ours, there may be a serviceman or woman also deserving of such a prestigious medal. But people did not see it or write about it. May I offer my personal congratulations to the committee and to all who have made this dedication possible, and to the veterans here today. I appreciate the invitation to be with you all, to participate in the ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. Next speaker is our main speaker, who really needs no introduction. Mayor James Dyer has long been a long-time supporter of Veterans Affairs. He continues a glorious, long-time family tradition of public service and is credited as a major early supporter for this memorial. His strong support, along with the Common Council, on behalf of the citizens of Danbury, in committing the location and a major sum of financial resources, has greatly assisted in the erection of this memorial. It is fitting, then, that we have the Honorable James Dyer as our main speaker. Mayor Dyer.
Thank you very much. It's a great personal honor and a pleasure to be able to join with you in presenting today's main dedication address, as this is an historic occasion for our city, our region, and our people. This is an opportunity I will cherish for my lifetime. Veterans, clergy, honored mayors, special guests, friends, and fellow citizens. It has been man's tradition since the beginning of time to honor great deeds and courageous acts with memorials. Sometimes the tributes have been as simple as early man's markings on ancient cave walls. Some memorials have been as grandiose as the Arc de Triomphe on the Champs-Élysées, and some have been as heartrending as Arlington National Cemetery. A memorial is defined as something that keeps remembrance alive. Today's dedication remembers courage and it honors courage. President Kennedy, who would have been 71 years old on this date, described courage in his Pulitzer Award-winning book, Profiles in Courage, as requiring no exceptional qualifications, no magic formula, no special combination of time, place, and circumstance. It is opportunity that sooner or later is presented to us all. Stories of past courage can define how individuals responded to challenge. Stories can teach. They can offer hope. They can provide inspiration, but they cannot provide courage itself. For this, each individual must look into his own soul. The men and women who served us in Vietnam reached to their very souls for our nation in time of need. There is history behind this memorial. There are deeds that were accomplished and that contributed to individual well-being in Vietnam. There are acts that contributed to the safekeeping of Jefferson's outline for democracy. And there are memories. The month of May is a bright time. It is a time for hope and renewal. It is traditionally the time when we honor veterans of all wars and patriots of all generations. It is a time of poppies and parades and a time for tears. The historical perspective of Vietnam harkens to an era that sometimes seems 100 years ago and at other times seems only like yesterday. The Vietnam War was the first military engagement brought live into our living rooms each evening on television news, in much the same manner that Edward R. Murrow visited with celebrities only a decade before. This television war exposed many myths, and it shattered some of the beliefs we held in our nation. The timely broadcasts probed the very fiber of our country and our unity as a people was weakened as the doves and the hawks fought it out in the other war, the war of words at home, in our streets, and on our campuses. The shadow of that domestic war was cast for far too long over the returning Vietnam veteran. Vietnam stirred new questions about our role in the world. Some challenged our right to be in Southeast Asia. Some refused to go. Some decided to fight in the streets. but thousands of others, over 500,000, met their obligation to their country and went to war, into battle. No veteran of this war is anything less than a hero in our time. The men and women of this nation who went to Southeast Asia did so in the noble pursuit of freedom and democracy for a people who were and are repressed. This memorial that we dedicate today is of special significance because it honors the veteran, those who returned, and those hometown 43 who could not, and it also honors the ultimate benefactors of our deeds as humans, our children and the children of the world. Be it a military action or a war on drugs, it is the children we strive to save and preserve. It is the future that we cherish, but the inheritors of the future must be reminded of the cost of the delivery of freedom and quality of life to each succeeding generation. This memorial does that, and it does more. It says we care about those who served in what has been termed an unpopular war, but popularity isn't the issue. The issue is, and has always been, the individual who served, the soldier, and the deserved honor that was delayed for so long. Not just honor carved in granite, but the honor of living a dignified life as a returning veteran. This nation was unfair for a very long time to those who were loyal to our country's stated mission. We should learn from this horror-filled experience and never repeat the neglect of veterans again. It was a mistake to attempt to hide the Vietnam War by ignoring those who served and their needs. It was a mistake to ignore MIAs and POWs for at least a decade, and it must never, ever happen again in this nation.
Here, here.
The new popularity of television shows, publications, and history lectures about Vietnam is healthy for this nation and its young who have a thirst for knowledge. And all the stories and all the tales focus, as they should, on the men and women who did their duty. Heroes must never be forgotten, nor left behind or ignored at home. And in an age where there seems to be no heroes, America only needs to look at the Vietnam veteran to find purpose and a renewed sense of patriotism. Recognition and dignity for the men and women who represented America is marked today in Danbury. We are a community united in respect for those who went and who did not question their obligation to a strong America. This monument will remind people for all eternity of the price paid for service by individuals and families and the cost to a nation for its policy decisions. This monument also reminds us of the need for devoting ourselves to making better the lives of those who did return. There are medical, psychological, and economic needs that still go unmet. And there are also MIAs and POWs that should be at the top of the list of our national agenda and who are not. Today's service and dedication does not erase the pain. It does not heal the wounds that still haunt so many, but it does make us proud as a community. This memorial is the result of outstanding community-wide support. Support from World War I veterans and other military organizations, the business and civic community, individuals, loved ones, and especially the untiring efforts of Richard Cacase, John Hill, and the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee. Without their leadership, there would not be a memorial, and they deserve a solid round of applause of appreciation. And let us also give an ovation and a welcome home to those veterans of Vietnam we honor today. As veterans, as citizens, as Americans, we must boldly face the life of strife, as stated by Theodore Roosevelt, resolute to do our duty well and manfully, resolute to uphold righteousness by deed and by word, resolute to be honest and brave, to serve high ideals, yet use practical methods. Above all, let us shrink from no strife, moral or physical. Neither must we shrink from the knowledge of our nation's deeds and the obligation we have to those whose lives are affected. One of the greatest tributes we can give must be the knowledge we gained from the Vietnam experience and the application of that knowledge to future national decisions. Today, we remember. We say we care as a community, and we honor the veteran of the Vietnam War, for they honored us with their distinguished service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dyer, for that inspiring address. The eulogy will now be given by Chaplain Timothy Steeves, Major, United States Army Reserve, will be followed by Patrick Waldron, Director of Veterans Affairs for Greater Danbury, who is privileged to read the Roll of Honor. Major Steeves.
Let me begin by reading a passage from the book of Exodus. And the Lord God said to Moses, "Bring near to you Aaron your brother and his sons with him from among the people of Israel. And you shall take 2 stones, and there you will engrave the names of the sons of Israel. As a jeweler engraves signets, so you shall engrave the 2 stones with the names of the sons of Israel. And you shall set the stones upon the shoulder pieces of the ephod. And Aaron shall carry the stones before the Lord upon his shoulders. And it shall be unto them an everlasting memorial." Here ends the reading. Near the end of the book of Exodus, after all of the exciting events which we know so well have taken place, the miracles before Pharaoh, the parting of the Red Sea, we find this passage which I have just read. Perhaps it is not as exciting as some of the more colorful parts of the book of Exodus, but it is certainly just as important. For here it is where we find God instructing Moses about how the children of Israel are to remember and to give thanks for all that has happened to them in their collective struggle to escape the oppressive yoke of Egyptian slavery and to find a new life on the other side of the Red Sea. More than anything else, God says to Moses, they are to remember. And so it is that they did then, thousands of years ago, the very same thing we are doing here today. Some stone, some names, some memories. In a few moments we will hear some names which for many of us will enliven a particular memory of a unique person. A person who was with us once, but now is gone. But even so, when we hear the name, we might be able to see a face, or hear a voice, or imagine a trait or a mannerism by which that person was known. And as the name is heard once again, so for a fleeting, precious moment, the person who once journeyed through life at our side is alive once again. That is why God commanded Moses to inscribe the names of the sons of Israel on the stones. That is why we are here today, to keep alive the memory of those young servicemen who sacrificed their lives in loyal service to our nation. Some weeks ago, when I first began to think about what I might say this afternoon, the word loyalty kept rising before me over and over again. We cannot think about those who died in Vietnam without thinking about the war itself. It was a cruel war. We know that all wars are cruel, but this one had an added cruelty. Because there was no clear, unified, national resolve, the purpose for our presence there always was ambiguous. This was a war in which there was no rallying cry. There was no Pearl Harbor. There was no obviously evil power such as Hitler to draw our nation together in a clear collective force with a clearly unified will. It was an especially cruel war because there hung over it the dreadful possibility that the sacrifices made there may have been made without meaning. And it was into this war that the servicemen we now honor were called to service. And it is their loyalty which so commands our awe and our respect on this day. They were the loyal ones. They were the ones who stood by the nation even when our purpose was not clear. Many of our fellow citizens were asking questions. Many were saying we should not be in Vietnam. Many were protesting. It is the great genius of our nation that we have the capacity to reflect upon our own motives. And certainly each of us must try to be true to the dictates of his or her own conscience. But this day does not belong to the historians, does not belong to the commentators. This day belongs to those men whose names are inscribed forever on the memorial we are about to see. For they are the ones who remained loyal at a time when being loyal was hardest. They were the ones who stood by the nation even though they didn't have all the answers, even though they had doubts, and even though it was a time when there was no national resolve. Somehow they found the strength to be loyal, the courage to act, even in the face of uncertainty. Theirs was nothing less than an act of faith. And as so often happens, that faith was greatly called upon and made many demands. The ancient Greeks believed that memory is the mother of all wisdom. I believe that our nation has become much wiser as it remembers the painful experiences and sacrifices of those who served and those who died in the war in Vietnam. The events of this day, the presence of this memorial, the hard labor, effort, and work which brought this day to fruition, and the cherished memories we all have of those who died in Vietnam, all offer unshakable testimony that their sacrifice was not in vain. For we truly have come home to ourselves. In the steadfast loyalty which they demonstrated so unselfishly, we are once again reminded of the noble example which they have set before us. This example of loyalty, even in the face of uncertainty, has now become their legacy for us. And we are a better nation, we are better persons, because they once walked among us. We will remember this day. We will be reminded of this day because of this monument. Most of all, we will remember those who have died. And as we remember, we will find to our wonder that we still can feel the warmth of their afterglow. Amen.
Reverend clergy, members of the dais, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, and honored guests, I would like to inform you of the sequence of events that shall take place immediately following the reading of the Roll of Honor. There shall be a rifle volley, followed by taps played by members of the Danbury Drum Corps, followed immediately by an artillery salute. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise? Will the color guard please come to right shoulder arms? The Greater Danbury Vietnam War Casualty List. From the town of Bethel, Corporal Harold F. Gentile, United States Army, killed in action June 24, 1968. Private First Class Gary C. Griswold, United States Marine Corps, killed in action October 14, 1967. Private First Class William B. Mitchell, United States Marine Corps, killed in action November the 3rd, 1965. From the town of Brookfield, Private First Class Francis A. Azarito Jr., United States Army, killed in action February the 3rd, 1968. Major Morgan J. Donahue, United States Air Force, missing in action December the 13th, 1968. First Lieutenant Alan S. Farnham, United States Army, killed in action December the 30th, 1968. Warrant Officer Guy F. Johnson, United States Army, killed in action March 26, 1969. First Lieutenant Stephen C. Jones, United States Army, killed in action March 14, 1968. Private First Class Dennis G. Taylor, United States Marine Corps, killed in action August the 9th, 1966. Lieutenant Junior Grade Lynn M. Travis, United States Navy, missing in action February the 6th, 1968. From the town of Danbury, Corporal Vernon H. Baker II, United States Army, killed in action June 18, 1967. Captain Richard C. Bensowitz, United States Army, killed in action March 21st, 1969. First Lieutenant Richard O. Bickford, United States Army, killed in action October the 18th, 1968. Lance Corporal John K. Clark, United States Marine Corps, killed in action March 6, 1967. Commander LeGrand O. Cole, Jr., United States Navy, missing in action June 30th, 1967. Corporal Michael M. Farmer, United States Marine Corps, killed in action November the 5th, 1968. Staff Sergeant James G. Flynn, United States Army, killed in action May 31st, 1969. Aviation Technician 3rd Class Charles M. Getz, United States Navy, killed in action January the 6th, 1967. Specialist 4th Class Richard M. Hope, United States Army, killed in action October the 5th, 1970. Specialist 4th Class Barney J. Kelly, United States Army, killed in action March 19th, 1967. First Lieutenant Timothy J. McCarthy, United States Army, killed in action December the 20th, 1966. Lieutenant Junior Grade Gerald W. McKinley, United States Navy, missing in action March 31st, 1965. Sergeant Arthur C. Morris, United States Army, killed in action April 3rd, 1966. Captain Charles B. Penn, United States Army, killed in action November 29th, 1969. First Lieutenant Richard G. Repley, United States Army, killed in action July 8, 1970. Electrician Second Class Joaquin C. Rodriguez, killed in action February 14, 1966. Private Russell J. Rotko, United States Marine Corps, killed in action October 30th, 1968. Staff Sergeant Robert J. Thompson, United States Army, killed in action April 8, 1970. Sergeant Thomas J. Tyrell, United States Army, killed in action March 30th, 1969. Private First Class Lawrence G. Visconti, United States Army, killed in action May 2nd, 1967. Private First Class Donald M. Wayman, United States Army, killed in action June 12, 1969. Corporal William J. Zaborowski, United States Marine Corps, killed in action December the 8th, 1969. From the town of New Fairfield, Lance Corporal Michael J. Fredo, United States Marine Corps, killed in action May the 2nd, 1969. Lance Corporal Edward J. Monahan, United States Marine Corps, killed in action August the 30th, 1965. Specialist 4th Class John C. Wright Wiesner, killed in action January the 20th, 1970. From the town of New Milford, Lance Corporal Robert E. Berry, United States Marine Corps, killed in action October the 12th, 1966. From the town of Newtown, Warrant Officer Eric G. Blanton, United States Army, killed in action November the 20th, 1969. Captain John F. Young, United States Army, killed in action January the 16th, 1968. From the town of Reading, Private First Class David C. Carlson, United States Army, killed in action November the 5th, 1966. Second Lieutenant John L. Gagan, killed in action November the 15th, 1965. Lance Corporal Peter E. Sipe, United States Marine Corps, killed in action May the 10th, 1969. First Lieutenant Philip R. Volvard, United States Army, killed in action February the 2nd, 1971. From the town of Ridgefield, First Lieutenant Thomas E. Carnegie, United States Army, killed in action April the 19th, 1968. Captain Samuel D. Freeman, United States Army, killed in action January the 7th, 1967. Specialist 4th Class William H. Keeler, United States Army, killed in action March 24th, 1969. Warrant Officer John T. Orico, United States Army, killed in action November the 2nd, 1970. Sergeant Peter C. Town, United States Marine Corps, killed in action August the 18th, 1965. May God bless all of them.
Bring all the colors to present arms, please.
Father Stanley Rousseau, pastor of New Fairfield, St. Edward's Church. Father Rousseau.
The whirring of those blades reaches across that time. And we commemorate with this monument all those who went through the hell of Vietnam. The ones who died, and the living dead who came back scarred forever. More than any other war, this was the difficult one. And its pain was even more terrible for all those involved. The bravery and perseverance of those who fought in this war go far beyond what was required by duty. Metal and stone are not able to express our gratitude. The little we do, we do. And we know, Lord, that you understand all this pain more than we do, and that your heart reaches out to all these heroes, heroines, victims, and families of war. As a soldier holds this child in his arms, so you hold us, giving us strength, courage, and hope. We don't live in the past, we live now. And we go on, and may the sacrifice of these heroes and heroines of Vietnam bear fruit in the end of all wars. We are truly blessed that they fought for us so well. Make our hearts strong for peace, justice, and compassion. We offer this prayer, this blessing, knowing that you hear and give answer to our plea of peace for all nations, for all time. Amen.
This concludes the formal portion of our program, and I cordially invite all those who are seated to form to the right and be among the first to view the memorial, followed by those who are standing. We thank you for being participants in today's most historic and noble event. Thanks once again. also the recipient of the Distinguished Service Award from the Connecticut Veterans of Foreign Wars. He's a great supporter of Veterans Affairs, as he is all things that we need. Okay, he's a very, very good Democrat, even though he carries the Republican label. We love him. Our friend, Congressman John Rowe.
Gino, thank you for that. I'm not sure deserving introduction, but I'll say that you can give that introduction anywhere you'd like throughout the 5th District. My apologies for not being able to be with you earlier. We had a commitment that goes back a year and a half to the Brookfield Bicentennial, their 200th anniversary. And we had hoped to try to work it out to make it over for the celebration. And I understand that you had some fine speakers with Mayor Dyer and Gino and the mayor and others. And so I just want to say thank you. I know that the people in this room are relatives and friends of servicemen that we've lost over the years. I also know that many of you have been part of the committee and individuals that have worked so hard to make this possible. And I know it goes back, my memory, at least 4 or 5, maybe even 6 or 7 years in the planning stages. And it's so nice to see the final product out there. It's a beautiful memorial. It's kind of breathtaking, to tell you the truth. It gives you the same impact as the memorial down in Washington. And I've got to commend not only you, but the people in the Danbury area. For some reason, the Danbury area has been first and foremost in public awareness, public education, and in the memorial services from the Vietnam conflict. And for that, I congratulate all of you and commend the community. I can't help also but notice that so many young people are now becoming intrigued, interested, maybe even a little angered and frustrated at the Vietnam conflict and are having difficulty wondering exactly what happened. But slowly but surely, as this entire nation heals the wounds of the Vietnam conflict, our young people are beginning to understand. I can tell you that there's great future for this community and for this nation, because last week, on Wednesday, 110 Weston Middle School kids, 8th graders, came down to Washington. They came down to see the monuments and to see the Capitol, and I take them out of the floor of the house. It's a ritual we go through when all the kids come down. But these kids were very, very impressive. Number one, they wrote a beautiful poem about the Vietnam Memorial Wall. And they heard about the vandalism done by a few misguided individuals. And I think you read in the paper probably today that some $60,000 was raised by mostly young people to repair the wall. Well, these 8th graders from Weston Middle School came down to Washington. They had heard about the vandalism that was done to the wall. And they had a bake sale, and they raised $854. And to me, that was so impressive to see young people taking on their own initiative, wanting to impact the community, wanting to impact something that's really almost on an out of sight, out of mind, there down in Washington. And it was just so impressive and, to me, heartwarming to see our young people coming together, wanting to learn more about the war, and willing to take an action. And this memorial is really going to be a remembrance to the 58,000 men that we lost, men and women. It's going to be a remembrance to the conflict 15 years ago, and certainly all of us in this room have worked hard on the MIA POW issue, and we still want an accounting for the 2,400 MIAs, and God knows we're going to keep working towards that. And again, the Danbury community has been in the forefront of that public awareness, and it's been, for me, the impetus, the generation that I've had in working on this issue on the Veterans Committee and on the Armed Services Committee. So, Gino, I want to thank you, the Mayor, and I saw Jim Dyer earlier, and Pat, and everyone else that's worked so hard in the committee to make this a final reality. It's something that generations and generations of young people will be able to look to, and it's so easy to forget. The Vietnam War, like so many other wars, is the out of sight, out of mind. The farther we get away from conflict, the easier it is to forget. And this will always be a reminder that we lost 1 million men and women since the Civil War. 1 million. And a reminder of what we should do the next time we ever get involved in a conflict. And with that, I thank you. I've got Middlebury Parade tonight, and I've got 4 more parades tomorrow. I was kidding a few people. I said, no wonder no one else wants this job. And so I've got to make a run for Middlebury now. Again, I apologize for not being with you, but I think you were in great hands with the wonderful speakers you had this afternoon. Thank you. God bless. Have a great weekend.
certainly my privilege to introduce your chairman, Richard Case. I've been involved in many things in the last 40-some odd years, and I can't think of one person that I have found who's been more dedicated, more single-minded, more inspirational, more motivational than Richard Case. Once again, let me present Richard. Richard, great job. It's been a great opportunity
Now the easy part of the afternoon for Richard Case. I get a chance to recognize the many, many people who had vital roles in putting that memorial up. I would like to ask the following people to stand to be recognized. The artists and craftsmen. On the granite base was provided by Ravelli Monuments in Danbury, Connecticut, Mr. Joseph Canzanero, President. Would you please stand, Joe? Mr. James Canzanero, Vice President and Project Manager for this project. Mr. Fred Haynes, Plant Manager and On-Site Supervisor. The bronze castings were provided by the Northern Art Foundry in Astoria, New York. Robert Spring, President. And then already introduced at the dedication, Mr. George Corus, sculptor. On behalf of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee, Mayor Sauer has agreed to present awards to the following people. When I call your name, would you please come up? A woman who has been behind the scenes since 1983, quietly supporting the entire effort of the committee. She was directly responsible for the coordinating the fundraising effort of many of the volunteers in the Greater Danbury area and provided hundreds of hours of time disseminating information to organizations and agencies whenever needed. We'd like to present Mrs. Shirley Hill with a token of our appreciation and to recognize her for an excellent performance in support of this memorial. Got it where she couldn't say something. And for 5 years, she's telling me what to do. Okay, now we'd like to introduce the members of the operating committee who have worked so hard in the past several years with so little recognition. As I call your name, would you please come up to the podium and Mayor Joseph Sauer will present your plaque. Mr. William Shaw. Phil joined us in 1987 and has since acted as liaison with the mayor's office. He helped coordinate the air-ground activities which were carried out so well today. He was born in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, and served in Korea and 2 tours of duty in Vietnam as a helicopter pilot. For 13 years, he was a helicopter pilot to Presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. He retired 15 years ago and joined IBM as a helicopter and Learjet pilot. Presently, he is serving as a councilman for the 6th Ward and is a member of the VFW and American Legion. Thank you, Bill. Mr. Larry Landerman. Larry also joined us in 1987 and has since played a major role in obtaining the helicopters and coordinating the flight activities between the Danbury Airport, flight crews of the different military groups who supplied the helicopters, and was a flight leader in those helicopters which landed on the field adjacent to the school today. He hails from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and served in the United States Air Force from 1964 to 1968 as a sergeant in the cryptographic field. Since his discharge, he has been employed by IBM at the Thomas J. Watson Research Center in Yorktown Heights as a senior laboratory specialist. Since 1977, he has been a member of the 1st Battalion, 42nd Aviation Brigade, 42nd Infantry Division, New York Army National Guard. Currently, he holds the rank of warrant officer and is a pilot in command of the AH-1S Cobra attack helicopter, the one that's out on the field right now. He obtained an associate in science degree from the State University of New York at Albany and holds an FAA commercial helicopter, fixed wing, and instrument pilot training. He and his wife Dorothy reside here in Danbury with his 2 stepsons, Jerry and Danny. Thank you very much. Mr. Jack Barrows. They think by hiding off in the corner they're not going to get called up here. I tried. Jack is one of the original members of the committee who started with us when the committee was formally organized in July of 1985. His primary role was to create on canvas that representation of the memorial that we would build. Many hours of drawing and changing and redrawing resulted in the colored painting, which was a landmark for the memorial and the mainstay of the fundraising effort. He's a disabled Navy veteran who served aboard a cruiser in the Atlantic during the Korean War era. He's a graduate of Bridgeville High School and has been a Danbury resident for the past 25 years. He attended Ringling School of Art in Sarasota, Florida, and has had 28 years experience in retail advertising, technical illustration, and as a visual material specialist for the Norwalk school system. He is married, has 2 sons, and now operates his own art business in Danbury, where he specializes in cartoons, illustrations, and portraits. He presently serves on the board of directors of the Richter Association for the Arts. Thank you very much. James Purcell. Here we go. He gets up quiet. That's a habit of handling money for 3 years. He said, "What happened to the $5?" And Jim Purcell goes to the bathroom. Jim is another original member of the committee, and as treasurer had the primary responsibility of caring for the money we entrusted to him. His additional task was to assist Pat Waldron, the Director of Veterans Affairs, in identifying the military personnel whose names would appear on the roll of honor. He was born and raised in Danbury and attended St. Joseph's School and Danbury High School. In 1942, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and is a combat veteran of campaigns in North Africa, Italy, France, and Germany. He worked for the News Times for 44 years and recently retired as a camera room supervisor for the paper. He is married and has 3 children and is a member of the Danbury Exchange Club, Catholic War Veterans, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the Mill Plain Fire Department. He is presently the Graves Registrar for the city of Danbury. Thank you very much, Jim. Mr. Patrick Waldron. Here's a gentleman, you can't believe what this guy has done. He's just been fantastic. Pat has contributed to this committee since its inception in July of 1985. His role was probably the most difficult. His primary responsibility was to determine the names of the men killed in action and missing in action from the greater Danbury area. In addition, he had to find relatives of each man listed on the memorial, which involved literally hundreds of man-hours, persistence, and dedication. In addition, he is responsible for this fine reception which you are now attending. He's a native of Danbury, attended Danbury High School and Western Connecticut State University. He has spent 22 years in industrial management prior to his present position as the Director of Veterans Affairs for the greater Danbury area. He is a U.S. Navy veteran of the Korean War and is presently a member of the American Legion, Catholic War Veterans, and a past Vice President of the Concordia Society. He is married and has 3 children. Well done. John Hill. One cannot say enough about John. His motivation and dedication is a main ingredient of the success story of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial. As co-chairman of the committee, he was my alter ego. He was calm when I was upset. He was uplifting when things were not going well, and in general, just a natural counterpart to me. He did an excellent job overseeing the subcommittees and numerous tasks that had to be watched, controlled, initiated, and/or curtailed. John and I spent many, many hours in discussion outside of the normal meetings to ensure that the meetings would be efficiently run and as much ground was covered as possible. We traveled together, inspecting and supervising the work on the memorial, and the product is a result of many hours of research and recall on Vietnam-era equipment. He's a lifetime resident of Danbury. He graduated from St. Joseph's School in Danbury and Catholic Central High in Norwalk. He's a Vietnam combat veteran and served with the 1st Marine Air Wing as a helicopter crew chief, seeing action in Chu Lai, Marble Mountain, and Dong Ha. He has been a member of the Marine Corps League since 1970 and is a former detachment commander. He has served as a member of the Danbury Veterans Council since 1975, was a 1984 Memorial Day Parade Marshal, and is past president of the Veterans Council. He is married and has 2 children and is employed by United Postal Service. John Hill.
If I may, just for a moment, I'd like to thank everyone who supported this project, and I would like to especially thank 3 people that have been my main supporters for the last 15 years anyways, or maybe not 2 of them. My 2 daughters, Susan and Michelle, and a special thanks to my wife for her tremendous support over the last 5 years on this project, Shirley. Thank you. The next gentleman we all know, Mr. Richard DeCase. I first met Richard in Rogers Park in 1981 at a Memorial Day parade. And even though we came from different walks of life, we found we shared a common bond as veterans. And from that common bond grew a friendship. And from that friendship grew a dream that became a reality. Without Richard's natural leadership qualities, I feel that the veterans of this area would not have had the recognition that they so justly deserve. As chairman of the Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial, Richard was responsible for directing the activities of this committee towards its goal of erecting the Vietnam Memorial. He accomplished this by setting up the following objectives: select a suitable site for the memorial, design the memorial, interview and select a qualified sculptor to create and erect the memorial, organize the memorial fund and solicit donations from individual service, fraternal, and social organizations, town and city governments, and corporate donors. We were fortunate to have a man of his caliber and fortitude. Richard is a Vietnam combat veteran who served with the 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, 3rd Marine Division, seeing action in Da Nang, Phu Bai, Dong Ha, and Con Thien. Originally from Yonkers, New York, he attended high school at New York Military Academy in Cornwall, New York. He attended the Air Force Academy from 1961 to 1965, majoring in national security affairs. After service in Vietnam, he earned a Bachelor of Engineering degree in Electrical Engineering from the City College of New York. He worked for a major New York engineering firm from 1968 to 1982. From 1976 to 1982, he directed major construction projects in Iran, Kuwait, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Sicily. In 1982, he started his own electrical and mechanical consulting engineering firm, DeCase Associates, in Fairfield, Connecticut. He is a licensed professional engineer in the tri-state area. He is presently a member of the Marine Corps League and a past senior vice commander. He is married, has 4 sons, and resides in New Fairfield, Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, our chairman, Mr. Richard DeCase.
Okay, tomorrow is Memorial Day, and as you know, we have a Memorial Day parade. Somebody do me a favor, take this out of here, will you? And the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee will appear for the last time in public as a group. And I wanted to pass these things out tonight to each of them. It's our uniform for tomorrow. We'll wear these tomorrow in the parade. The Greater Danbury Vietnam Veterans Memorial. So you know who we are. Larry, Bill, Jim, come on in. We don't want to close tonight without recognizing a certain group of people who have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort in providing this reception for you. The Concordia Society in Danbury here. Would you please give a round of applause? They've done a tremendous job. Tremendous job. all of the food that was donated by the people in Danbury. We got an outpouring of funds and gifts at the last minute that some of the people didn't make it into the brochure. We tried to make an insert. We slipped it in there. We still got people donating stuff, and we'll recognize them in the newspaper sometime in the very near future. But the thing that impressed me the most, there were many times when I wanted to bang my head against the wall because I figured nobody cares. We're not getting the money. Every time we tell the newspaper we want something in the newspaper, they put an article on the 14th page, and people tell us it's the best kept secret in the greater Danbury area. But what happened was, when it started to come to light that this memorial was in fact going to be erected, people came out in droves, and it's very heartwarming. You can't help but do a good job. I think everybody appreciated the coordination of the ceremony today. Hundreds of people involved, people from Albany, Bradley International. I mean, they're coming in from everywhere, and they all got there at the right time. We can't do any better. When you got people who care, it has to work. And when you got people who care, and they want to be there, even if you make a mistake, they don't care. It just comes out right. Thank you all. I'm going to retire from Veterans Affairs for the next 25 years.
Just one more announcement, ladies and gentlemen, before we close. Larry Landerman still has his Cobra helicopter outside in the field, and anyone who would like to take one pass of taking a look at it before he has to go back up to Albany, New York, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
With me is Jim Canzanero, Vice President of Ravelli Monuments. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning.
I was wondering if you could just tell us briefly what's going to happen today as we leave here.
Well, what's going to happen is that we're going to start unloading the granite at the site, and we're going to start erecting the memorial, and weather permitting, of course. The base, of course, will be the first thing taken off the truck. We have 2 trucks here, and then we will have the centerpiece put on, and then from there we will proceed to do the wing.
Is the bronze statue coming in today?
The bronze statue will be here today, yes. We probably will receive that sometime this afternoon.
Okay, fine. What I'd like to do is when we get to the site, if it's possible, I'd like to go right over to the slab, and perhaps you can explain to us exactly what you're going to do step by step.
Yes, we'll do that.
Okay, fine. That was installed with the concrete base. This lightning conductor will pass up through the slab, through the main centerpiece, and will be welded onto the bronze statue at the top. Now informs me that this particular base weighs approximately 18 tons. That's a lot of poundage. The mass is not in the dead center, and as a result, every time they lifted it, it tilted to one side, so they had to have the yellow rope hold that corner up. Into position, and we're getting ready to drop it down onto the concrete base.
structures you see in front of the slab are going to be relocated after the memorial has been fully erected. One will be placed on either side of the memorial, and that will be done by the tree warden here in Danbury under the supervision of Bob Ryerson, the Department of Parks and Recreation. Inserts underneath the granite block. The lead will now take the shape of the granite block and seat itself. They'll set that down on very accurate lines with a minimum of clearance to allow the main block to then be lifted and slid between the left and right wings so that it'll be flush with the front and the rear. Almost down now. And they're going to try to set it as close to its position as possible to avoid having to shift it in any one direction more than a couple of millimeters. Watch. All of the effort that goes into this is not just because they're professionals at their jobs, but because when it's all done with, it's a remarkable thing that they can say they completed. Their contribution to this is something they'll never forget. Bring it down into place. They'll come down only so far, then they have to pull that wire back through. What you see is master craftsmen at work. Jim, the wire. The wire. Looks like this is the final placement. Looks like it's down. Now they'll verify that it is lined up on all corners. They're in the process now of blocking up the statue in a horizontal position so as not to damage the rifle.
Even though long overdue, today's event touched the hearts of many.
First Lieutenant Richard G. Repley, United States Army, killed in action July 8, 1970.
It hurts to contemplate the deaths of young men with so much to live for, so much potential cruelly snuffed out. But our hearts are uplifted today, knowing that the greater Danbury community will not allow their memories to die.
The monument bears the names of 47 Greater Danbury residents who never came home from Vietnam.
Private First Class Donald M. Wayman, United States Army, killed in action June 12, 1969.
Above the marker is a bronze statue of an American soldier carrying a Vietnamese child.
I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
It holds special significance for Arlene Zaborowski, whose son William was killed in the conflict.
My son wrote home and he said, Mom, he said, he saw the little children there. He says, they need us here.
This monument is far more than the metal and stone it is made of. For the men who served and the families of those who died, it represents a pride in the past and a promise for the future.
I hope America never forgets the lessons of Vietnam and the price we paid, and that we learn from that experience and pass it on to our future generations.
Today's events mark a dream come true for Richard Cacase, who spearheaded the fund drive. He says the monument is a tribute not just to those who died, but to all of those who served.
This memorial is a testimonial to each and every one of you. By its presence, the people of Greater Danbury are saying to you, welcome home. God bless you, and well done.
Ginny Musanti, Channel 3 Eyewitness News, Danbury.
The memorial honors 47 men and women from the Danbury area who were either killed or are missing in action. The city of Danbury contributed $75,000 in the land at Rogers Park for the project. Another $65,000 came from donations from nearby towns and private organizations. Several hundred people turned out for today's ceremony. The statue is designed to show the irony of the war by depicting an American soldier holding a rifle in one hand and a Vietnamese child with the other hand.